I spent 35 years building $1 million empire for my son, sacrificing my health, my savings, everything I had. When cancer nearly killed me and I lost my home, he wouldn't even return my calls. I thought I'd failed as a father, until the day his empire crumbled and he came crawling back, broken and desperate, finally understanding what he'd thrown away. Before we start, please subscribe the channel and share from which time zone you are listening from. My name is William, and I'm 71 years old. They say you can't put a price on family, but I learned the hard way that some people will try. I spent 35 years building an empire, not for myself, but for my son. I gave him everything: my youth, my health, my savings, my dreams. I thought I was teaching him about success. Instead, I taught him that his father was disposable. But this story isn't just about betrayal. It's about justice. It's about what happens when karma decides that enough is enough, and delivers a lesson so brutal, so perfect, that it changes everything. Let me tell you how I built a millionaire, and how life tore him down to nothing. I started Patterson Construction in 1978 with a borrowed pickup truck, a toolbox, and a dream. My boy Danny was just 2 years old then, and his mother Linda was pregnant with our second child. We lost that baby, a little girl we'd already named Sarah, and Linda fell into a depression so deep I thought I'd lose her too. Work became my refuge and my purpose. Every nail I hammered, every foundation I poured, every contract I signed was for my family. Danny would ride with me to job sites, wearing a tiny hard hat I'd bought him, asking a million questions about Daddy's work. "Someday, son," I'd tell him as we watched the house frame go up, "all of this will be yours. You'll never have to worry about money like I did growing up." By the time Danny was in high school, Patterson Construction was the biggest residential builder in 3 counties. We employed 40 men, built custom homes, and had more work than we could handle. But success came at a cost. I worked 16-hour days, missed school plays and baseball games, and developed high blood pressure from stress. Linda begged me to slow down, to enjoy what we'd built, but I couldn't stop. There was always another contract, another opportunity, another step up the ladder for Danny's future. "You're going to work yourself to death," Linda warned me when Danny was 16. "I'm building him a legacy," I replied. "He'll thank me someday." Danny was a smart kid, got good grades, but he showed more interest in the business side than the construction work. He'd spend summers in our office, learning about contracts, permits, and profit margins, instead of getting his hands dirty on job sites. "Dad, why do you do all this physical labor when you could hire more crews and just manage?" he asked one day. "Because this business was built on my reputation for quality work. Customers trust Patterson Construction because they know I personally oversee every project." "But that's not scalable, Dad. You're limiting growth by insisting on being involved in everything." He was 17, using words like scalable. I was proud of his business sense, but something felt wrong about a teenager who thought work should be easy. Danny went to State University on a full scholarship, not because we needed the money, but because he'd earned it. He studied business administration while I kept building the company, planning to hand him a thriving empire when he graduated. Linda died of breast cancer during Danny's junior year. The medical bills were enormous, even with insurance. I mortgaged our home and liquidated investments to pay for experimental treatments, anything that might save her. Danny visited twice during her 8-month battle. "Dad, you know I love Mom, but I can't miss this internship opportunity," he'd explain over the phone. "My career is at a critical stage." His career. He was 20 years old. Linda passed away on a Tuesday. Danny couldn't make it home until Friday because he had important meetings that week. I sat with my wife of 28 years as she died, holding her hand, whispering about the life we'd built together while our son was networking in the city. After the funeral, Danny had suggestions for moving forward efficiently. "Dad, you should sell the house. It's too big for one person, and the equity could be invested in business expansion." I've been researching commercial properties. Commercial properties. His mother had been dead for 2 weeks, and he was talking about real estate investments. But I listened. I told myself this was his way of coping with grief, that he wanted to honor his mother by ensuring our business success. I sold the house Linda and I had built together and moved into a small apartment. The money went into expanding Patterson Construction. By the time Danny graduated summa cum laude, we owned 3 warehouses, employed over 100 people, and were bidding on million-dollar commercial projects. I'd built him an empire. "Dad, you've done incredible work," Danny said at his graduation party. "Now it's time to bring this company into the modern age." Modern age. Everything I'd built was suddenly outdated. Danny joined the company as vice president of operations. Within 6 months, he'd reorganized our entire structure, implemented new management systems, and hired consultants to optimize our processes. He was brilliant, I'll give him that. Under his management, our profit margins increased by 30%. We started taking on bigger projects, government contracts, multi-million-dollar developments. Danny networked with city officials, joined the Chamber of Commerce, and got Patterson Construction recognized as Business of the Year. But something was changing in my son. The more successful he became, the less he seemed to need his old man's advice. "Dad, we need to discuss your role going forward," he said one day in our new corporate office, a far cry from the trailer where I'd started. "You're still thinking like a small contractor. We're a major construction firm now." "Son, I built this company from nothing. I think I understand how it works. But do you understand modern project management, digital marketing, corporate finance? Dad, your methods worked great 20 years ago, but we're competing with companies that use cutting-edge technology and business practices." Every conversation became a lesson in how outdated I was, how my old-school methods were holding back progress. Danny would invite me to meetings where he'd explain new initiatives using terms I didn't understand, making me feel like a relic in my own company. Danny's strategy was brilliant in its subtlety. He never directly told me to step down or retire. Instead, he gradually made my position irrelevant. "Dad, why don't you focus on the things you're passionate about? Site supervision, quality control, client relations. Let me handle the boring administrative stuff." Administrative stuff, like running the company I'd built. Slowly, I found myself excluded from major decisions. Danny would present completed plans to me for approval, but it was clear that approval was just a formality. When I raised concerns or suggested changes, he'd explain patiently why my ideas weren't compatible with modern business practices. "Dad, I respect your experience, but we're not building single-family homes anymore. These commercial projects require specialized knowledge that I've spent years studying." The worst part was watching him succeed. Our revenue doubled, then tripled. Danny landed a contract to build the new Civic Center, the biggest project in our city's history. He was featured on magazine covers, invited to speak at conferences, hailed as a visionary young entrepreneur. At the Civic Center groundbreaking ceremony, the mayor introduced Danny as the brilliant mind behind Patterson Construction's remarkable growth. I stood in the back, wearing my best suit, watching my son take credit for 30 years of my work. That night, Danny came to my apartment, the first time he'd visited in months. "Dad, we need to talk about your financial future." My financial future. In the company I'd built. "I've been meeting with accountants and financial advisors," he continued. "Given your age and health issues, it makes sense to start planning your transition to retirement." Health issues. I'd mentioned having some back pain from years of physical labor. "Son, I'm 65, not 90. I'm not ready to retire." "But Dad, you could. The company's doing so well now that we could set up a generous retirement package for you. Full pension, healthcare coverage, maybe a consulting role for special projects. You'd be financially secure for life." Financially secure. Like I was some employee being offered a gold watch. "Danny, this company is my life's work. I'm not ready to walk away." His expression hardened slightly. "Dad, you have to think realistically. Your skills they're more suited to the old business model. What we're doing now requires different expertise." Different expertise. That's what 35 years of experience had become. Obsolete skills. Over the next year, Danny implemented what he called a succession plan. Gradually, my responsibilities were transferred to other managers. My office was moved to a smaller space to make room for new departments. My input was requested less and less frequently. I found myself arriving at work with nothing meaningful to do. The crews didn't report to me anymore. They had new supervisors with business degrees who'd never swung a hammer. The clients dealt directly with Danny or his account managers. I was a figurehead in my own company. In December of 2019, I started having persistent stomach pain. I ignored it at first. Construction workers learn to work through discomfort. But when I began losing weight and feeling constantly exhausted, I finally saw a doctor. Stomach cancer. Stage 3. The oncologist explained my treatment options with clinical detachment, surgery, chemotherapy, radiation. The survival rates weren't encouraging, but there was hope if we acted aggressively. I called Danny from the hospital parking lot. "Dad, that's serious. What do the doctors say?" I explained the diagnosis, the treatment plan, the fact that I'd be out of work for months. "Well, don't worry about the business. We've got everything covered here. You just focus on getting better." Getting better. Like it was a choice. The surgery was brutal. They removed 2/3 of my stomach and several lymph nodes. Recovery was slow and painful. Danny visited once during my week-long hospital stay. "You look good, Dad. Really. The doctors say you're responding well to treatment." I looked terrible and felt worse, but I appreciated his attempt at optimism. "Son, I'll need some help during recovery. Maybe someone could drive me to treatments, help with groceries." "Of course, Dad. Let me see what we can arrange. Maybe we could hire a home health aide. The company insurance should cover most of it." A home health aide. Not as help, but hired help. The chemotherapy was hell. Waves of nausea, crushing fatigue, mouth sores that made eating agony. I lost 40 pounds in 3 months. But the hardest part was the isolation. Danny was too busy with the Civic Center project to visit regularly. He'd call once a week, brief conversations about my progress and business updates. "Dad, I hate to bring up business while you're recovering, but we need to discuss the Peterson contract. I need you to sign some documents." Documents for deals I hadn't been consulted about, for projects I knew nothing about. I was too sick to argue. That's when the medical bills started piling up. Despite having good insurance through the company, cancer treatment is expensive. Experimental drugs, specialized scans, extended hospital stays. The out-of-pocket costs were staggering. I called Danny, explained that I was struggling financially, that I might need an advance on my salary to cover medical expenses. "Dad, the thing is, cash flow is really tight right now with the Civic Center project. Most of our capital is tied up in equipment and materials. But let me talk to the accountant about what we can do." What they could do. Not what he would do for his father, but what the company might be able to arrange. The answer came in an email from our company's HR department, explaining that due to extended medical leave and changing business needs, my position was being restructured. I was being offered early retirement with a reduced pension. Early retirement at 66 while fighting cancer. I called Danny immediately. "Son, did you know about this email?" "Dad, we need to be practical. You've been out of work for 8 months. The company has evolved during that time. Your old position doesn't really exist anymore." "My old position?" "Danny, I'm the founder of this company." "I know, Dad, and we'll always honor that. But the business reality is that we can't keep a position open indefinitely for someone who may not be able to return to full capacity." Full capacity. I was still undergoing treatment, still fighting for my life, and my son was calculating my productivity value. "What's my pension going to be?" "Well, it's complicated. Since you're taking early retirement and haven't fully vested in the new pension system we implemented." The new pension system. He'd changed the pension system without telling me. The numbers were devastating. After 35 years of building the company, my monthly pension would barely cover rent on my apartment. Certainly not enough to cover ongoing medical expenses. "Danny, I can't survive on this amount." "Dad, maybe you should consider selling your company stock. That would give you a lump sum to work with." "My company stock? In the company I'd built, that he now controlled. What's my stock worth?" Another complicated explanation about market conditions, company debt, and restructuring costs. The bottom line, My 40% ownership stake in a multi-million-dollar company was worth about $150,000 after necessary deductions. $150,000 for 35 years of my life, and a company worth millions. Son, this isn't right. This company exists because of me. I mortgaged everything I owned, worked 16-hour days, sacrificed my health to build this business, and now you're buying me out for the price of a house. Dad, I'm trying to help you here. This money could pay for your treatment, set you up in a nice retirement community. You'd be comfortable. Comfortable, while he lived in his mansion, driving luxury cars, enjoying the empire I'd built for him. That's when I realized the truth. Danny had been planning this for years. The gradual reduction of my responsibilities, the pension system changes, the stock valuation. It was all designed to push me out while minimizing what he'd have to pay me. My son had executed a corporate takeover of his own father. I took the buyout because I had no choice. $150,000 seemed like a lot until the medical bills started coming. Cancer treatment for an uninsured 66-year-old is financially catastrophic. Within 6 months, I'd spent half the money on medical expenses. Danny, meanwhile, was thriving. Patterson Construction completed the Civic Center project 6 months ahead of schedule and $2 million under budget. Danny was named Businessman of the Year by the State Commerce Association. The company went public, and overnight, my son became worth $20 million. $20 million, built on the foundation I'd laid, using the reputation I'd spent decades establishing. I applied for jobs, but who wants to hire a 67-year-old cancer survivor for construction work? The few companies that would consider me offered minimum wage positions, a humiliating step down for someone who'd once employed hundreds of people. My apartment rent went up. My car needed major repairs I couldn't afford. I started shopping at dollar stores, clipping coupons, calculating whether I could afford both groceries and prescription medications in the same week. The final blow came when I had a minor heart attack, stress-related, the doctor said. The 3-day hospital stay used up the last of my savings. When I was discharged, I couldn't make rent. I called Danny. It was the first time we'd spoken in 4 months. Dad, you're in the hospital. Why didn't you tell me? I'm telling you now. Son, I need help. I can't make rent this month. I don't have anywhere to go. Silence. Long, awful silence. Dad, this is really bad timing. We're in the middle of merger negotiations, and my personal finances are tied up in company stock options. Maybe you could stay with Aunt Margaret for a while. Aunt Margaret lived in a retirement home in Florida. She had dementia. Danny, I need help. I'm your father. I gave you everything. Dad, I know, and I appreciate everything you did. But you have to understand, I have responsibilities now. A family, employees, investors. I can't just what? Help your father. Look, let me see what I can do. Maybe the company foundation could provide some emergency assistance. The company foundation. He was offering me charity from the company I'd built. That night, I slept in my car in the parking lot of Patterson Construction, the building where I'd worked for 20 years. Looking up at the windows of offices that had once been mine was now my shelter. I thought about Linda, about the life we'd planned, about the son we'd raised to be better than this. I wondered if I'd failed as a father, if I'd taught him the wrong lessons about success and family. As I tried to sleep in the backseat of my 15-year-old sedan, I saw Danny's BMW pull into his reserved parking space. He worked late now, like I used to, building his empire on the ruins of my life. I lived in my car for 3 weeks before finding a room in a boarding house, the kind of place where broken men go to disappear. My neighbors were recovering addicts, ex-convicts, and other casualties of life, who paid by the week and minded their own business. I found work as a part-time handyman, fixing leaky faucets and squeaky doors for elderly tenants in low-income housing. It was honest work, but the pay was barely enough to cover rent and food. At 67, after building a construction empire, I was living in poverty. I stopped following news about Patterson Construction. It hurt too much to see Danny's success, knowing I was sleeping on a mattress that smelled like cigarettes and defeat. But news has a way of finding you. It was a Tuesday morning in March when everything changed. I was replacing a kitchen faucet for Mrs. Chun, an elderly widow who paid me in cash and homemade soup, when my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer. Creditors had been calling for months. Is this William Patterson? Yes. Mr. Patterson, this is Detective Rodriguez with the Fraud Division. I need to speak with you about Patterson Construction and some irregularities we've discovered. Fraud Division. My blood went cold. What kind of irregularities? Sir, I'd prefer to discuss this in person. Could you come to the station this afternoon? 2 hours later, I sat in a sterile interview room across from Detective Rodriguez and an FBI agent named Collins. They laid out documents I didn't recognize, contracts, bank statements, correspondence that painted a picture I couldn't believe. Mr. Patterson, were you aware that your son has been using Patterson Construction as a front for a money laundering operation? Money laundering. The words didn't compute. Agent Collins opened a thick folder. We've been investigating Danny Patterson for 18 months. He's been taking payments from shell companies connected to organized crime, then funneling that money through construction projects that don't actually exist. They showed me contracts for buildings that were never built, invoices for materials that were never ordered, payments to subcontractors who didn't exist. Millions of dollars moving through Patterson Construction's accounts in an elaborate scheme to clean dirty money. The Civic Center project was legitimate, Detective Rodriguez explained, but Danny used it as cover for dozens of phantom projects. He'd create fake construction contracts, show paper trails for work that was never done, then pocket the difference. How much money are we talking about? I asked. Conservative estimate? $15 million over 3 years. $15 million. More than enough to have helped his father through cancer treatment and financial crisis. Money he'd stolen while letting me live in my car. Mr. Patterson, we need your help. As the original founder of the company, you may have legal protections that could help us unravel the scheme. But there's something else you need to know. Agent Collins pulled out another document. Danny didn't just steal from criminals. He's been embezzling from the company's legitimate accounts, too. Money that should have gone to employee pensions, worker compensation claims, and... He paused, looking at me with something like sympathy. And the account that was supposed to fund your medical insurance after retirement. He's been stealing from his own workers, Mr. Patterson, including you. The room spun. Danny hadn't just abandoned me. He'd actively stolen the money that should have covered my medical treatment. Money that workers had contributed to. Money that was supposed to take care of people like me who'd built the company. There's more, Detective Rodriguez said gently. We have recorded conversations between Danny and his associates. They discuss you specifically. Would you like to hear them? I nodded, though I wasn't sure I wanted to know. The recording was scratchy, but the voices were clear. Danny and another man, discussing the old man problem. My father keeps asking for money, Danny's voice said. It's becoming a liability. Can't you just get him something to shut him up? Why should I? He served his purpose. The company's established now. I don't need him anymore. What if he starts asking questions about the finances? Danny laughed. Actually laughed. He's an old-school contractor. He doesn't understand corporate finance. Besides, cancer's expensive. He'll be too busy trying to survive to cause problems. Too busy trying to survive. My son had calculated that my cancer would keep me from interfering with his crimes. The recording continued. If he becomes a real problem, I'll have him declared mentally incompetent. Cancer treatment affects cognitive function. No one would question it. They played 3 more recordings. In each one, Danny discussed me like I was a business problem to be managed, not his father who'd given him everything. Mr. Patterson, Agent Collins said after the last recording ended, we're going to arrest Danny tomorrow morning. But we need to warn you, when this goes public, Patterson Construction will collapse. Everyone associated with the company will be investigated. Your reputation might be damaged by association. My reputation? I almost laughed. What reputation? I was a broke old man living in a boarding house. What happens to the workers? The people who depend on the company for their livelihoods? That's partly why we need your help. As the original founder, You have legal standing to claim legitimate ownership of company assets. With your cooperation, we might be able to preserve the legitimate parts of the business and protect innocent employees. Protect innocent employees. The same employees Danny had been stealing from while they supported their families. What do you need me to do? Danny was arrested at his mansion at 6 a.m. on a Thursday morning. I wasn't there to see it, but the news footage showed him in handcuffs, being led to a police car, while his wife screamed at reporters and his children watched from an upstairs window. His children, my grandchildren, who I'd never been allowed to know because their father thought I wasn't successful enough to be part of their lives. The news broke like a tsunami. Local businessman arrested in massive fraud scheme. Millionaire contractor accused of money laundering. Father's construction company used for criminal enterprise. The irony wasn't lost on me. The headlines all mentioned that Danny had built his empire on his father's foundation, but the father had been cast aside when he was no longer useful. But the real story came out in the following days. Investigative reporters dug into Danny's background, interviewed former employees, and uncovered the systematic way he'd extracted me from the company I'd built. Cancer-stricken father forced into poverty while son stole millions. Local hero builder abandoned by ungrateful son. The man who built an empire, only to be betrayed by his heir. The community rallied around me in a way I never expected. Former employees came forward with stories of how Danny had cut their benefits while increasing his own salary. Clients testified about how I'd always stood behind our work, while Danny had cut corners to increase profits. Mrs. Chun, the elderly woman whose faucet I'd been fixing, saw me on the news and called reporters. "This man is a saint," she told them. "He fixes things for free for people who can't pay. He's been living like a poor man while his son lived like a king." The legal proceedings moved quickly. Danny tried to claim innocence, tried to blame subordinates and business partners, but the evidence was overwhelming, and those recorded conversations destroyed any sympathy the jury might have had. During the trial, prosecutors painted a clear picture. A greedy son who'd systematically destroyed his own father to build a criminal empire. The contrast was stark. Me, living in a boarding house, working as a handyman for pocket change, while Danny lived in luxury on stolen money. The most damning moment came when prosecutors played the recording where Danny laughed about my cancer being expensive enough to keep me distracted from his crimes. The jury visibly recoiled. Several women wiped their eyes. Danny was sentenced to 22 years in federal prison. All his assets were seized, the mansion, the cars, the business, everything. His wife filed for divorce before the sentencing hearing was over. But the sweetest justice was yet to come. The court appointed me as the administrator of Patterson Construction's legitimate assets. My job was to separate the clean business from the criminal enterprise, to protect innocent employees, and salvage what could be saved. It was like archaeology, digging through years of Danny's deceptions to find the solid foundation I'd originally built. Stripping away the fake contracts and shell companies revealed that the core business, the part built on my reputation and relationships, was still valuable. Working with federal accountants and business attorneys, I discovered that Danny's crimes had generated massive tax liabilities and penalties, but the underlying construction business remained profitable. More importantly, I learned that my original ownership stake had never been legally transferred. Danny had bought me out with company money, but he'd never actually gained full ownership. The legal technicalities were complex, but the bottom line was simple. I was still the majority owner of Patterson Construction. The first thing I did was restore the employee pension fund that Danny had raided. The second was to track down every worker who'd been cheated and make them whole. It took months and cost hundreds of thousands of dollars, but it was the right thing to do. Then I did something that surprised everyone. I offered partnership stakes to the senior crew leaders who'd stayed loyal to the company's values, even when Danny was cutting corners. Men who'd worked for me for 20 years, who'd built their careers on the reputation we'd established together. "Mr. Patterson," said Jake Morrison, my former foreman, "you don't have to do this. You could sell the company and retire rich." "Jake, I've learned that money without family is worthless. You men are my family now. You stood by the company when my own son was destroying it. This business should belong to people who understand what it really means. We restructured Patterson Construction as an employee-owned cooperative. Every worker who'd been with us for more than 5 years got equity stakes. Decisions were made collectively, profits were shared fairly, and no one could be forced out unless they violated our core principles of quality, honesty, and loyalty. The business thrived. Clients who'd been burned by Danny's cost-cutting and corner-cutting came back to us, relieved to be working with the original Patterson Construction again. We landed new contracts based on our renewed reputation for integrity. Within 2 years, the company was more successful than it had ever been under Danny's management. But success measured differently now, not just in profits, but in the security and dignity of our workers, the quality of our projects, and the trust of our community. I was in my new office, nothing fancy, just a simple space where I could meet with clients and review plans. When the call came, it was Danny, calling from federal prison. Dad, I hadn't heard his voice in 3 years. He sounded older, smaller somehow. Hello, Danny. Dad, I need to talk to you. There are things I need to say. I'm listening. I'm sorry. God, Dad, I'm so sorry. I know that's not enough. I know I can't undo what I did. But I need you to know that I understand now. I understand what I threw away. His voice broke. This man who'd been so confident, so sure that his modern business methods were superior to his father's old-fashioned values, was crying. What happened to you, son? How did you become someone who could steal from people who trusted you? Who could abandon his own father? I don't know. I mean, I do know, but it sounds like excuses. I got caught up in the money, in the lifestyle, in proving I was smarter than everyone else. I told myself you didn't understand modern business, that I was protecting the company from your limitations. But really, I was just greedy. Greedy. Such a simple word, for such devastating consequences. Danny, you had everything. The business was successful. You could have lived well just from legitimate profits. Why risk everything for illegal money? Because it was never enough. Every success made me want more. Every compliment made me think I deserved more. And you, Dad, you represented everything I thought was holding me back. Your values, your caution, your focus on relationships over profits. I convinced myself that sentimentality was weakness. Sentimentality. My love for my son, my commitment to our workers, my belief in doing right by people. He'd seen it all as weakness. Do you know what the worst part is, Dad? It's not the prison. It's not losing everything. It's knowing that I had the most important thing in the world, a father who loved me unconditionally, and I threw it away for money that wasn't even mine. Danny, I did love you unconditionally. I still do. But love doesn't mean accepting being treated like garbage. It doesn't mean enabling someone to hurt other people. I know, and I don't expect forgiveness. I just wanted you to know that I finally understand what you tried to teach me. Family matters more than money. Character matters more than success. And I had the best teacher in the world, but I was too arrogant to listen. We talked for an hour. Danny told me about prison, about the therapy he was getting, about his ex-wife and children who wouldn't speak to him. He'd lost everything, his freedom, his family, his reputation, his future. But most of all, he lost me. Danny will be eligible for parole in 15 years. He'll be 58 years old, older than I was when he forced me into retirement. I don't know if I'll be alive to see that day, but if I am, I'll be there. Not because he deserves it, but because that's what fathers do. Some people ask me if I feel vindicated by his downfall, if I enjoyed watching karma destroy the empire he stole from me. The truth is more complicated than that. I feel sad. Sad for the son I raised. Sad for the grandchildren who'll grow up knowing their father is a criminal. Sad for all the good years we lost to his greed and my pride. But I also feel grateful. Grateful that I lived long enough to see justice done. Grateful for the community that rallied around me. Grateful for the workers who became my chosen family when my blood family failed me. Patterson Construction employs 150 people now. We've built schools, hospitals, and homes that will stand for generations. Every project carries a plaque. Built with integrity by Patterson Construction, a worker-owned company. It's a legacy I'm proud of, a legacy built on the values Danny once scorned. I'm 71 years old. The cancer is in remission, though it may come back. My body bears the scars of a lifetime of hard work and the betrayal that nearly broke me. But my spirit is stronger than it's ever been. Young fathers sometimes ask me for advice about raising children, about building businesses, about balancing family and success. I tell them this: success without character is failure waiting to happen. Money without love is poverty of the soul. And no empire is worth destroying the people who love you. I gave my son everything I thought mattered: financial security, business opportunities, a path to wealth and success. But I failed to teach him the one thing that matters most: that how you treat people, especially family, defines who you are. Danny learned that lesson the hardest way possible. He had a father's love and threw it away for money that wasn't even his. He had workers' loyalty and betrayed it for profits he didn't earn. He had a community's respect and lost it for crimes that destroyed lives. The ultimate revenge wasn't his imprisonment or financial ruin. The ultimate revenge was him finally understanding what he'd lost and knowing it was too late to get it back. I built an empire for my son. Karma tore it down to teach him what really matters. And in the ruins of his greed, I found something more valuable than any business. I found my self-respect. If you're listening to this story and you recognize yourself in Danny, if you've been taking family for granted while chasing success, it's not too late. Call your father. Hug your children. Remember that the people who love you aren't obstacles to your dreams. They're the reason your dreams matter. Because when everything else crumbles, family is all you have left. And sometimes, if you're very lucky, family is enough.